summer camp, preseason camp for football up at University of Colorado, and unfortunately, time for more domestic violence accusations. That will be our subjects today. I'm Michael Klahr. When we do, Rockin Company's Rockin CU, Adam Munsterteiger joins us again this week at Adam CM777, and brought to you by Rockin Company, making Colorado beautiful with natural stone construction for 5 decades. RockinCo.com. Zadie's Deli, hitting it out of the park with those great sandwiches, overstuffed. Adam has to get half to go if he's going to do his running in Denver when he comes down and eats with me there. Free parking front and back, 121 Adams Street in Cherry Creek, and they cater. And Frame to Art, framer to the pros. Cannot tell you how, we tried once to tell you how many dozens of Broncos get stuff framed there, but the colleges do it too. And congratulations to Brian Hart. Frame to Art voted best framer by a poll in each of these community newspapers: Englewood, Littleton, Centennial, and Lone Tree. Frame to Art, 3065 South Broadway, Brian Hart's place. And good morning, Adam.
Good morning, Michael. Yeah, Colorado's players are finishing up with meetings and heading down to the practice fields for practice number 1. So here we go.
Wow, getting ready to go, and you will be down there, I know, covering all of that. Looking forward to another season. Before we jump in and do the training camp preview, and I want to ask you a couple of specific questions about this team going into camp, let's talk about Anthony Julmise, who has been suspended indefinitely at this point.
Yeah, he was arrested late Thursday morning, and as far as I know, charges have not been brought against him. The Boulder Daily Camera has an article that has some of the details of the incident that took place, and certainly don't want to downplay domestic violence on any level. But you read the details, if everything that the Boulder Daily Camera is reporting in that story is accurate, then it actually sounds like Julmise's ex-girlfriend was more of the instigator in this situation. So, again, assuming that all those details are correct, I have a hard time believing that Julmise is going to get charged or there's going to be anything really negative in terms of a punishment against him. But obviously, following the whole Pumpkin saga, they had to suspend him immediately, and they have to take this. They've got to be even more precautionary with this situation than maybe they would have. It's kind of bad timing in that sense. But
well, the good news is that Mike McIntyre may have called Rick George, he may have called Phil DiStefano, but he at least reported the allegations of this incident to the Office of Institutional Equity and Compliance. So something has been learned here.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, no, they're not going to make that same mistake again, that's for sure. But, yeah, it does. From the football side, it affects their depth a little bit at cornerback. Julmise, of course, we had talked about him battling for that cornerback spot opposite Isaiah Oliver. I would imagine Trey Udofia, redshirt freshman, is probably going to be taking the most of the reps there with the ones at that cornerback spot now until this whole Julmise situation gets sorted out.
Is Udofia then, does he now become the odds-on favorite? Because I think Julmise was considered the favorite there. But what about Dante Wigley? Is it a 3-man race?
Wigley's in there. He came in from the junior college ranks this spring and looks like he was fitting in better in the nickelback role. He's a pretty physical guy. Wasn't quite as consistent in terms of coverage skills at that cornerback spot, but sometimes with those JUCO guys, the light kind of turns on, and he could certainly be in the mix there by the end of camp. It's hard to say. I actually felt like Udofia had taken a small lead in that cornerback spot, even over Julmise during spring ball, but certainly that was going to be one of the closest position battles between Udofia and Julmise, and it still might be. We don't know, how quickly this situation is going to sort itself out. But yeah, so Udofia it's not a huge jump down in terms of talent. If anything, he was maybe even in the lead.
Yeah, when we talked about what's your key position for this year's team, mine was cover corner, somebody to play with Oliver and be that cover corner after they lose 3 defensive backs to the NFL draft, high draft picks, all of them. All right, preseason camp, Mike McIntyre says, what did he learn from last year? That the offensive line was not as good and consistently good as Washington's defensive line. He says now his guys are 30 pounds stronger and more experienced. I personally, Michael Klahr, saw the lines get pushed around at Southern Cal and at Washington. Offensive line, the veterans on that line are my reason for optimism with a new quarterback coming in for Colorado. The offense will be terrific this year. Are they now able, in your opinion, will they be able to stand up to USC and Washington when they couldn't last year?
It's tough to say. I will say this is the best offensive line that Colorado's had in at least a decade. Well, we'll get to find out. Washington, of course, is the first Pac-12 game for Colorado, week 4 overall. So they'll get tested fairly early in the season. You look at it, there's a lot of experience on this offensive line. Even though you have to replace your starting center from last year, Alex Kelly, you have a fifth-year senior in Jonathan Huckins, who's played quite a bit of football to step into that role. Left guard, if you factor in that Jared Coe gray-shirted, he's basically a sixth-year senior. And then left tackle Jeremy Irwin, second-team all-conference guy last year, factor in that he got a medical redshirt. He's a sixth-year senior. And then on the right side, Tim Lynott Jr., a freshman All-American last year, really good at pulling, led the team in direct touchdown blocks. And then right tackle Aaron Hagler started a majority of games last year and was at 270, graded out as one of their best offensive linemen, and only was penalized once all season. And so another year in the weight room for him has got to be big. Yeah, this is a very, very talented and experienced offensive line, and so I think they will certainly be able to better stand up to those elite teams. Just exactly how big of a jump they've made, it's tough to say.
Yeah, let's. I got one more question for you. Then I want to hear your highlights for what you're looking for in preseason camp. What's a bigger loss, 8 defensive starters or the defensive coordinator, Jim Leavitt?
I would say the talent they lost there, and that's partly because Mike McIntyre has a defensive background. If he was this offensive whiz type of head coach and didn't know how to kind of keep the continuity there from scheme-wise in terms of hiring a new defense coordinator, obviously they brought in DJ Elliott, I'd be a little bit more concerned. And they recruited those 8 defensive guys that are gone before Jim Leavitt got to Boulder. And that's not to say that Jim Leavitt's not a great defensive coordinator, because he is. There's a reason Oregon's paying him all that money. But I think just the overall talent that they lost is a bigger hit.
All right, let me get your preseason camp take. What's the big deal? What are you watching for?
Well, offensively, we have a pretty good idea. There's some interesting battles at receiver with Juwan Winfrey back in the mix. So kind of curious how they're going to rotate those receivers, because there's too many talented guys in that receiving corps to just roll out your 4 starters like they did the majority of times last year. So kind of seeing how they're going to work in that receiver rotation. Does Gabriel Anto redshirt, or is he going to be part of that mix? That's kind of the main question mark on offense. And I guess you could say tight end as well. Dylan Keeney was one of the guys battling to replace Sean Irwin as the starting tight end. Well, he's out early on during camp, listed with a back injury. So it looks like that's going to be Chris Bound's job. How serviceable can he be in that role? That's a question mark there. Aside from that, offensively, you've got pretty much set starters, obviously with Steven Montez taking over. Defensively, you want to kind of see how that cornerback spot opposite Oliver that we mentioned shakes out. You want to see the defensive line. How much better shape is Javier Edwards than when he came in, around 380 pounds? Is he going to be able to play a majority of the snaps in that nose tackle role? Who else is stepping up on the D-line? That's a big question mark. Depth at inside linebacker, you might be relying on 2 true freshmen to back up those spots. So are those guys showing that they're ready to play? And then lastly, we've talked about him, the 30-year-old Australian place kicker coming in, James Stefano. Can he at least help Colorado be more consistent in terms of place kicking? They've really struggled in that area the previous 2 years. So those are some of the main themes in storylines that I'm looking at going into camp.
By the way, Mike McIntyre is siding with me on this issue, not Mark Kislow or you. He's saying that, yes, it is an advantage for Colorado State that they play a game early before they play Colorado in Colorado's opener. He said, if I'd known, I would have scheduled a game first on 0 week as well.
Well, congrats, Michael. I guess you're right.
I don't know if I'm right, but we got a disagreement here. There's no two-a-days anymore. NCAA has outlawed two-a-days. What's the impact, as you see it, on preseason practice?
Well, it's only a positive, because Colorado had been doing two-a-days in recent years, but they weren't hitting in both those practices, and the second practices on a two-a-day was basically a walkthrough. So I think this is better because it allows them to start camp earlier and get actual better productive practices instead of forcing it in a two-a-day setting. So it allows you to get more quality reps throughout the course of a preseason, in my opinion.
In our last half minute, let's tell everybody you edit buffstampede.com. Must reading. I read it all the time. Tell us what's coming up.
Well, there's a few prospects on campus today for an unofficial visit, and I think we're going to get another commitment for the Buffaloes today. So definitely check out buffstampede.com for more on that later today.
Very good. Class of 2018 taking shape. Adam Munsterteiger. Follow him at AdamCM777, buffstampede.com. Thank you, Adam.
Thanks, Michael.
All right, that's Rockin Company's Rockin CU, also brought to you by Zadie's Deli and Framed Art.